Hello! It's the return of the pinhead, so get your bowling balls ready. We're gonna strike out on this video. on views. We're gonna strike out on views. That said, sports. It's gonna sound very antithesis of cliche male, but I've never really understood the allure of sports to most people. I just really don't. In example, well, oh, Jesus, I mean, honestly, where do you start? First off, lacrosse exists, and that's a problem because that's not a sport. It's a mistake, like my existence. Second, second is you also have other sports that are so painfully boring and just unentertaining, including when you try to play them yourself, like baseball. Baseball is a really pointless sport, and it's really annoying. Games can last upwards of 5 hours, sometimes longer. Hit ball with stick across 400-foot field. Because then you chase after said ball like dog. To catch ball to throw at another person back where it came from. That's pretty much the sport. You also you also have golf. Definitely not a sport. At least with baseball, you can call it a sport because it's athletic. It does also require some strategy. Golf, golf is not athletic. And I'm sure there's gonna be people who are like, "Oh no, it's athletic. You got to be physically fit, and you got to really be able to have fine-tuned muscle control in order to, timing and great mental fortitude in order to keep all distractions out of your head, get the exact precise right angle with the wind to the southeast at 4.6 miles an hour with gusts upwards of 12.3. And you also have to make sure you account for the angle of the hill, g-forces, the weight of the ball, how clean or dirty the ball is, if there's any nicks or dents upon it. Same with the condition of your clubs. You have to do all this. Shut the fuck up. Oh, you also have to walk. Whereas 90% of people don't walk, they just drive a fucking golf cart. Fuck you. It's literally take metal stick, hit like chalk composite ball into a hole in ground. That's the entire premise of golf. It's literally it. And yes, I get it. You can literally do that with any and all sports, no matter what they are. You could break it down to its most painfully simplistic, basic basis of like, oh, this is exactly what this sport entails, and this is exactly what you're due within said sport. Like baseball, I already did that. I did it with golf. The two sorry successive sports, in my personal opinion, and they're just so wicked boring, including to do yourself. If you want to kill time and you literally have nothing better to do in your life to burn hours of your day away, then they're both great. And we will get back to the originality or the origination of golf, the origins of it, at some point because it's going to tie into another aspect of sports that aren't really sports. But as opposed to a skunk drunk person, that's totally not an obvious giveaway. To then be athletic, quote unquote, to do it. Sure. Before we get into that, there's also the aspect again of, well, that things like golf are not athletic. There's a lot of sports that are non-athletic, like fishing. Now, fishing can be a lot more athletic, quote unquote, than that of something like golf because of the fact that if you're, out in more wild areas, you might have to climb around cliff edges and mountain ridge lines and hills and all this other stuff and around and through trees and bushwhack and all this other stuff to get to specific spots you want to fish, especially if you are specifically a bank ridden fisherman. So you don't have a kayak, you don't have a canoe, you don't have a raft, you don't have a flotation device, you don't have any kind of a boat or anything to get you out on the water. So you literally fish from the bank, from shore. Then sure. But it's still not really a sport because the only way that golf and it fit together is the fact that they're both kind of sit on your hands, twiddle your thumbs, sit there and wait a while. You could probably take a couple hour nap in between nibbles upon your hook, and you still probably won't hook up, no matter how good and experienced you are at it. And here's the thing. I love fishing personally. Wow. I do. I love fishing. But even then, I still don't. No, it's not a sport. I'm sorry. It's absolutely not. The closest form of fishing that can be is sport fishing, specifically competitive fishing for, say, the tournaments for marlin and swordfish, you know, and sailfish. Yes, that could easily be argued as a sport because holy shit. If you manage to keep that thing on the line and it doesn't cut your line or anything like that, and you get all the way to the boat, even then, that endeavor to just get the hook out is a bitch. These things can weigh over 1,000 pounds. Well, specifically blue marlins can. They can get immense, and my god, are they pound for pound wicked strong fish. Each of them, even the sailfish. So, in that essence, yeah, especially considering you're also, of course, fighting the current of the ocean, which is never fun, and sometimes wind on top of that, and then the drag from the boat. And your wrist and hand and arm can only do so much, reeling and everything, and yanking the rod back before you're gonna rupture tendons and ligaments probably. So technically there is one single portion of fishing that can be considered athletic and therefore also genuine sport. Everybody, including fishermen, hate this phrase, but it's factually correct. I think it's one of the reasons why fishermen especially hate hearing it, because it's like, no shit, Sherlock. But it's not called catching for a reason. So it's called fishing, not catching, for a reason. That's the full phrase. Because, yeah. So that's the way it's like golf. And then, of course, you have the sports that are arguably the two biggest here in the U.S. You have, obviously, basketball.
Man misses on the three. Doncic stumbles out of bounds, and another late whistle. He goes over the top of the chairs.
You get the ball down. We're tired of jumping. We want to save all of our energy for the fast break.
I'll tell you what. Drives in, and will take it and miss it.
It's not an easy situation, as LeBron James, I believe, just airballed the free throw.
Steph Curry behind the back, drives down a lane and misses the jam. Oh, he missed it.
P going baseline, had that look on his eye, but got denied.
Going one-on-one. LeBron falls down.
So
George way off. Hits the side of the backboard.
Davis sitting out because of injury. Here's Curry off the steal. And oh, look out. Curry slipped. And now shoots for three.
And then you, of course, have football. False football. I will, from here on out, refer to it, what I like to refer to it as for accuracy's sake, which is the American Brain Damage Association and the American Bodyball League. So bodyball, or brain damage, is in itself something I will never understand why it is the most popular sport in North America. Specifically, North America. So obviously US and Canada. I will never understand it. And it just keeps getting more popular among all generations and, either gender. And it just confuses the hell out of me because it's one of the most dumb sports out there, in my opinion. There's nothing really interesting about it. It'd be a lot more fun to play it, I think, than it would be to watch it, for sure. Watching it is a waste of fucking time. Oh my god. My dad called me his football baby because he really wanted to mold me into this idyllic image for the perfect son he always had in his head. And, of course, I came out pretty much nothing like that idyllic image in any way, shape, or form. And that includes, I've never liked football. He is a diehard football fan. Brain damage fan. So he's huge on that. And what is with it anyway? Because it's almost always on artificial grass, fake grass. It's on what they call artificial or astroturf. It's almost always played on like this. I think it's like a plastic composite that they call turf. I don't understand that. And even if it is real grass, at least it makes it a little bit more understandable and better, but it's still weird. It's just a random set of leather that they decided to probably bind with a bunch of composites and other chemicals because it makes it way cheaper to produce. And then they get to fill it with air. And then they run around, and pretty much the premise is to give each other a lot of brain damage and snap each other's necks in half or whatever else from the hard contact that you're supposed to give each other. And it's just like, okay. And your point? so that you can run it all the way to a random part, piece of your field you determined was the end of your field. Cross a line that you marked in the grass, and voila, you scored points. And that's literally it. You run this oblong sphere full of air back and forth across a line in the grass. Woohoo. I don't get it, man. I'm sorry. I don't. It's whack. And then you, of course, have basketball. I like basketball a lot. Admittedly, I like it more. It's actually a weird thing for me. I'm very conflicted on how I feel about it. Because on one hand, there's a half of me that loves watching basketball. If not just for the reason that it tickles that little analytical and strategy, grand strategy portion of my brain, and that detail-oriented part, to kind of like the coach mind slash GM mind, so general manager mind slash, kind of high IQ player kind of guy, where I would adapt in life and situation, how I would do this differently, or that's that, why that was a fucking stupid move, whatever else. I love it for that reason. But at the same time, there's the other half of me that sits there and wonders why the heck I'm watching it in the first place. Like, why do I even care? This is so fucking stupid and boring. So half of me is bored and half of me is engrossed in terms of, like, it's interested. It's not like fully engrossed, or like I could be distracted and walk away and then forget that I was watching a game. But besides that, I'm still like really into it otherwise. But that other half of me simultaneously is like, I want to stop watching this because I'm bored. This is stupid. I'm watching a bunch of random dudes run back and forth across the length of 94 feet, back forth for 48 minutes, bouncing a rubber sphere full of air to toss through a metal ring for 48 minutes. That's literally all it really is. Why? Why is that interesting to people? Like, oh my god. It's such a weird thing. But that's why I actually have a bit of a conflict with it. Because, like, there's no sports that I'm interested in at all. Except for basketball. I'm half very interested and half not at all interested in it. And I can't explain it. It's like, I like to play it. Except when I play, I almost never actually playing with anybody. I'm technically doing what they would call shoot around or scrimmage, basically. Practice, whatever. But I like to imagine I'm actually playing against other people when I do that. I do it because it's weirdly therapeutic, and I don't even know why. For some reason, it genuinely acts like a form of therapy for me, so when I do it, it relaxes me a lot, and I just kind of go into the zone. I'm just there's no thoughts. I'm just dribbling, shooting, and running around like a chicken with my head cut off. And then you have, of course, the aspect of the pay for professional sports. Because it's getting so fucking insane now that for baseball, there is now, I believe, a $1 billion contract. I think it's 7 years, $1 billion. Within the NBA, it's obviously specifically usually increasing wage every single year. It goes up by, I think, an average of 5% or 8% now. I think it actually went up to 8% or something like that, 10% per year. It pay increases for the overall duration of your contract. $1 billion over 7 years. It doesn't even matter how you calculate that. That's wild. Just to get the perspective of, like, this fucker is being paid God knows how much fucking tens, maybe over $100 million, $100 million a year to dink a ball off a fucking wooden stick we call a bat. Huh? Or to catch a ball. Like, what are we doing? Paying people this. And then people have the fucking insanity to lose their shit and get upset and mad and feel deeply disrespected or whatever if somebody argues that's too much. What the fuck is wrong with you? Why do you think this makes sense to pay somebody that much to dink a ball off a stick? Like, what are we fucking doing? And now you're a horrible person and you disrespected people so much in their sport and this, that, the other thing. It's like, think, man. Why do they pay that much to do it? You have to start to break it down into what literally the sport is in its most primal, basic form. Because that's what the actual reality of the sport boils down to. This is what you're doing is boiling to. This is why we call it boil down to, right? Because everything else evaporates if you boil it enough, and then you literally just have whatever is left. AKA the actual substance. And you have to do that in order to try to justify how it makes any sense to defend these wages. It doesn't make any sense. It's chaotic beyond repair. Imagine getting paid like $100+ million per year to do something as stupid as hitting balls off sticks. Holy shit. And here in the NBA, I keep saying here in for some reason, in the NBA, they have it all the way up now to, I think, there's players that are, I'm pretty sure like Jason Tatum, I think it is, or the Boston Celtics is getting paid like $320 million or something over the next 4 or 5 years for his Supermax currently. And that's not even the tip of the iceberg, because now with the CBA, the collective bargaining agreement, and also the new TV deal, once they're both fully in play, every single year, the wage is going to keep going up substantially, to the extent that by the end of this current deal, a superstar NBA player, whether they're actually deserving of that, quote unquote, whatever if you want to say it's anyone's deserving of $100 million to bounce a ball up and down a court, a set of wood planks on the ground, sure, okay, go for it, I guess. But like, why? I think it's like they said it could be upwards of somewhere between like 550 and $800 million over 5 years could be that by the end of that, the official biggest supermax in the league's history. To bounce a rubber sphere full of air on a bunch of wooden planks, attempting to try to throw it through a random metal ring. Like, that's literally all that sort boils down. It hurts my soul. What the hell? Like, yes, you should be able to be paid for what you fucking love and have a passion for, obviously. And you should be able to be paid really well. I agree with that, especially considering the value of the sport in terms of how many viewers you get and how much money they give into the sport. is yeah, okay, sure. The value, yeah, okay. Here you go. Here's your contracts. I feel like there needs to be a cap at some point, though, where like even the leagues in themselves, the corporations themselves, should have like a federally or maybe even an internationally legal mandate to cut them off at a certain point of profitability. Say you cannot pay your employees or contractors technically, so your players and your coaches and everybody, more than this at any point in history. Also, once you reach a certain point where that's your profit is going ballooning out of control into the stratosphere, you need to be blockaded from making any more profit than that. All the rest of the profit you make beyond that cap has to be given to charity or something. It has to be reinvested into the actual general public and not into your stupid little corporation. Because clearly, it doesn't matter if you invest in your corporation or not. It's just exponential. So give it to the fucking people who are actually paying to watch your stupid sport. Like, at least make it make a little more sense in that regard. So it's also more balanced and fair across the board rather than just having endless profitability that just goes into fucking pockets. I do think it's just wicked weird and illogical to be like, no, they deserve that pay. Do they really? In that case, you could technically use that same exact argument you're using, that same logic, if you defend it, for paramedics. Then you could argue, what do they deserve? And you see, then you start getting to the class warfare problem, where now you're actually going and aiding and abetting the warfare problem, the classism issues of the world, and that globalism especially itself brought in, and thus corporatocracy, which in itself goes into a entirely different topic for a different day, for a different video, but it's very much poignant to mention it right here, because it's literally a huge piece of sports now, and it's just wild. Well, let's just bounce on, no pun intended, to other sports, specifically the ones I alluded to before. And that's the lawn sports, or aka the British sports, specifically things like croquet. And I know it's French, but the Brits love their French words for some reason. They have never gotten rid of it since William the Conqueror came in for some stupid reason. And I don't know. And I hate both the French and the English. So fuck them both. But yeah, especially the languages though. Holy shit. But different story. So point being, croquet, and bocce ball. Bossy, but C is a letter that shouldn't exist in itself. Different story again. Shuffleboard, lawn bowling, darts, all these different things like that. Golf. These are all lawn sports, or realistically, they should be called drunk sports, because that's literally the fucking point of these sports, is that they're supposed to be sports to do with your friends or whatever when you're fucking hammered out of your gourd. When you're slosh-buckled and wash-cuckled, when you're absolutely fucking wasted, when you're 3 sheets to the wind. And that, of course, the most British thing ever. Like, how can we get more drunk? Really Islesish, let's be honest. But still, it's just like, how can we get more drunk than we already are? And while our livers are still allowing us to exist, amongst kidneys and the brain, and pretty much everything else, like the spleen, let's think. What can we do for sports that we can at least semi-competently handle without dying? Because we're drunk, and so fucking blackout drunk, that we literally might crack our skulls on something, or get hit by a fucking truck. Lorry. Welcome to the British. I swear I'm gonna rant about the British and for like a whole video series. Oh good god, specifically the English, but yeah. Oh god, different day as usual. But yeah, these are different sports that are literally just made to be able to do when you're drunk. Therefore, can you really call them sports? I think not. Especially considering, of course, that means that 99% of them have zero athleticism requirement. Because again, you're probably not going to be coordinated at all, and you're going to have such a slow reaction time and response time, and probably not really be capable of having anything beyond cloudy judgment at best in your strategy, that there's zero way you could call those sports, because there is a requirement of athleticism. There's arguably, disputably, a requirement for strategizing, so there has to be a lot of mental aspects to it too, supposedly. And yeah, not really sports. I'm not saying necessarily that they can't be fun. I have no idea about croquet. That doesn't look fun. I have no idea about bocce ball. Doesn't seem like that'd be that much fun, but I don't know. We have cornhole here in the US we invented for some stupid reason. A bunch of beans inside of a frickin', or corn, I guess technically is what it was, inside of burlap or gunny. We sewed together and we glued together, nailed together, stapled together something, random pieces of scrap wood together at a slight up slant that we could put on the ground, cut a hole out of it, and then we just tried to slide from a distance, like horseshoes basically, but instead with a bag of corn and some wood with hole in it, and you tried to slide your fucking bag, your fat sack of nuts into her hole. Why does it take that long to realize there's a euphemism in that entire sport? And for some reason it can be weirdly fun, but again, it's like golf. Again, it's just a time burner. It's just there for, like, if you don't have anything better to do with your life at the moment, and you're just waiting for somebody, you know they're always gonna be like a couple of hours late, but you still want to be, just in case they come finally on time for once. Maybe you have 3 hours to kill. The first hour you're still sitting around anxious, and then finally like, fuck it, fuck them, we're gonna start. You start barbecuing, and then that's done, and you're like, well fuck, I guess we'll go play cornhole for the next however long it takes them to finally fucking get here. And that's cornhole pretty much. But it's also made for being skunk drunk, of course, because it doesn't really require any skills. It certainly doesn't require any coordination, really, at least not that much, and it's a non-serious thing. But the point is, they can be fun. I mean, this is why they also consider a lot of these bar games. I wouldn't be surprised if there's bars and pubs and shit like that, taverns in the world, whatever you call them, Biergartens, that have a mini golf course, and a miniature mini golf course probably, somewhere either inside or in the back. I wouldn't be surprised, because that would be very on the nose. I do love bowling, though. And actually, that could have its own video in itself, the history of bowling, and why bowling itself here is just bowling and not lawn bowling, and why does nobody lawn bowl in the US, and why does nobody ever have seemingly lawn bowled in the US? Well, it's apparently because, again, Americans are Americans and Brits are Brits, and the Americans wanted nothing to do with the British, so much so that they wanted to literally erase everything British, like lawn bowling. So, like a JW would, they rebranded it by tweaking it just ever so slightly, and then deciding, this is so different. And you know what we're going to call it? We're going to call it bowling. But don't accuse it of being the same as lawn bowling, because that's British. But they made it with bowling with actual wood lanes and pins and shit, and heavy balls, rather than grass. Probably dead in your backyard with a bunch of dog crap all over the place. At this point, probably. Or maybe it's Oxford shit. I don't know. But yes, sports are fucking weird. They're really weird. And there's a lot of wild weirdness in the mentalities of people who both love and also don't love sports. It's really weird. And also what people define as sports. Because you also have esports, aka electronic sports, also known as competitive gaming, which is not a sport. I'm a casual gamer. This whole fucking channel right here that you're watching this on literally started as a gaming channel. It was dominantly gaming all the way until really this year in 2024. Maybe you could argue more 2023, but either way, it was dominantly gaming this whole time. And that's almost a full straight decade. Like, you know, I've spent way too much time in my life playing video games. I also thoroughly enjoy them. And I'm still going to shit on esports because they are not sports. I don't give a fuck what your argument is. It's bullshit. I'm sorry. Just because you have to have really strong hands and great mental reaction times and fortitude, you have to be relatively physically fit in order to do this for a career, because otherwise you'll get your fucking blood clots in your legs, so thrombosis, and end up getting it. As usual, what normally happens is eventually, once you move again, it gets detached, goes up, and either gives you a pulmonary embolism, which you die from pretty much immediately, or it's a cardiovascular embolism, or sometimes it's a stroke, or sometimes it's a combination, and so you still fucking die. That's why you have a history where people have died in the middle of competitive gaming events and tournaments, because they literally sit there and do it. It's just the stupidest fucking set of arguments. It's like, oh, well, it's a sport and it's athletic because you have to be relatively physically fit. You know, especially to have the right reaction times. You have to therefore be really mentally strong and strategizing. And so, really, it has all the elements of a sport, and it's competitive. So you strategize with each other. You have these powwows where you get together. You're like, let's put our heads together. What's our next? What are we going to do the next round? Because it's like boxing in that sense. And therefore, it is a sport. It's not a sport. Like chess. Chess isn't a sport. It never has been. It never fucking will be. I guess you could call it a mental athletic or a cognitive sport. It's still not a sport. Like, but then again, that whole thing kind of exposes what I just fucking said, right? That the mentalities around sports are so, well, polarized always, but they're always so whack in their, like, logic that they try to use to counter each other, let alone try to argue what is and is not sports. There's a lot of people who would actually argue that there's no form of fishing that's a sport. It doesn't matter. And the reality is because they're biased against fishing. Because they think it's fucking for old rich retirees in South Florida or something, I guess. Or something like that. And it's just like, okay. Or maybe there's... Knowing modern day, the Western world, quote unquote, actually, there's probably a lot of progressive people who would probably claim that somehow it's a racist sport. Therefore, that's why they even invalidate it and work to invalidate it, because it can't be considered a sport if it's supposedly rooted in white supremacy or some weird shit, because somehow, well, historically, whites are the only ones in the world who've had relatively consistent access to modern fishing and fishing implements and access to places to fish, and therefore it is not actually a sport because I don't like it because I think it's racist. Huh? People have the dumbest fucking logic these days, and aka therefore their logic is illogical. It is not logic. It's like it's the literal antithesis of logic is their logic. And it kills me. And that's just in general throughout anything in life. I digress. I could rant a lot about topics like this because it's just the weirdest set of feelings I have for it. Some of it's contradictory, but for the most part, I just hate the mentalities within it. And there's a lot of things that just aren't sports. I mean, at this point, you could have competitive worm racing because, people have ant farms, people have worm farms. Kids have worm farms. You have marble races, which now that I think about it, God forbid, I bet that's listed officially as a sport, which doesn't make any sense because you're literally doing nothing instead of dropping your fucking marble in a fucking wooden track. Point being, there's a lot of stupid shit when it comes down to sports. Also, thank you to Big Tug, aka Tucker, for the idea and inspiration for this weird random ass video. But I just really felt like talking about this after I saw that video, and I'm like, this brought up a lot of conflicting feelings, and I am not happy about it. Send help, because my feeble brain is not capable of handling all of this competitive, contradictory stimuli all at once, simultaneously. Send help. It's whack. There you go.